When you hear the name Napoleon Bonaparte, what comes to mind? Probably that famous hat, right? The short general. But the real story? Wow. It's so much bigger than that. We're talking about one person whose ambition literally redrew the map of Europe and honestly shaped the world we live in today. So let's get right into it.
So here's the big question, the real head-scratcher. How does a revolution that's all about liberty, equality, fraternity, getting rid of a king, end up with an absolute dictator? I mean, think about that. Just a few years later, one guy has more power than any king ever did. How on earth does that happen? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out.
Okay, so to really get Napoleon, you've got to understand the world that created him. He wasn't just some guy who showed up out of the blue. Nope. He was a product of his time, a really, really chaotic and desperate time. It's like he was forged in the fire of all that turmoil.
So you have the French Revolution, right? It completely rips apart the old way of doing things. The king's gone, the nobles have run for the hills, but what's left? It's not this beautiful free republic everyone dreamed of. It's just chaos, years of terror and instability, and that left this massive, dangerous power vacuum right in the middle of Europe.
And this is the key. You have to imagine what it was like for the average person. They were just exhausted, sick and tired of the constant fighting and uncertainty. They wanted stability. They wanted order. They wanted to feel proud of France again. The country wasn't just looking for a leader. It was practically screaming for a savior, someone to rescue it from itself.
And right into that mess, into that void, steps this young, incredibly ambitious general, a guy from Corsica named Napoleon Bonaparte. This is the story of how he saw that chaos not as a problem, but as the opportunity of a lifetime, and used it to grab absolute power.
And what's just mind-blowing is how fast it all happened. Seriously, look at this. 1799, he grabs power. By 1804, just 5 years later, he's crowning himself emperor. This wasn't some slow climb up the political ladder. This was a lightning-fast power grab, an absolute masterclass in taking a chaotic situation and making it all about you.
And this quote from the man himself, it tells you everything you need to know about how he saw things. He said, "I found the crown of France on the ground, and I picked it up with my sword." He didn't think he was stealing power. In his mind, power was just lying there in the mud, abandoned. He truly believed he was the only one strong enough to pick it up and make France great again. But here's the thing about Napoleon. Just fixing France was never going to be enough. His ambition was way bigger than that. He was thinking about the whole continent, and his vision for a new Europe, well, it was about to set the world on fire.
Yeah, the Napoleonic Wars, they weren't just a bunch of random fights. They were all driven by this one man's incredible ambition. He wanted to build a whole new European order, with France calling the shots. He basically wanted to export his version of the revolution across the continent, whether they liked it or not.
Just look at this chart. It really shows you how insanely successful he was. That first little bar, that's France when he took over in 1799. Now look at the next two bars combined. That's his empire and his allies just 12 years later. It's massive. He basically controlled almost all of mainland Europe. The growth is just off the charts.
So how did he pull this off? Well, with an army, a really, really big army. At its peak, his Grande Armée had over 600,000 soldiers. To put that in perspective, that was the largest European army ever assembled at that point. It was this incredible military machine built for one purpose, conquest. And for a while there, it seemed like nothing could stop it. But you know what they say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And for empires built so quickly on pure conquest, that's almost always true. The same massive ambition that got Napoleon to the top, well, it was also what was going to bring him crashing down. He just reached too far. It wasn't just one thing that did him in, it was a series of terrible mistakes. First, he gets stuck in this ugly, draining war in Spain that just bleeds his army dry. Then, he tries to start an economic war with Britain, but it totally backfires and hurts his own allies more than anyone. And then, the big one, the fatal mistake, the invasion of Russia. And just look at these numbers. They tell the whole horrifying story. Over 600,000 soldiers march into Russia. Fewer than 100,000 make it back out. That unstoppable army was completely shattered, not just by soldiers, but by the brutal Russian winter. The retreat, it's one of the worst military disasters in all of history. The human cost is just, it's unimaginable. And here's why that was so devastating. In Russia, Napoleon lost more than just an army. He lost his myth. The idea that he was invincible, that was shattered forever on those frozen plains. And as soon as his enemies saw he could bleed, they all ganged up on him like never before. So eventually, he's defeated, exiled. The story's over, right? Not even close. Because the shadow Napoleon cast over Europe is incredibly long. In a lot of ways, his actions created the world we're still living in today. His legacy is so complicated, it's a total paradox. On one hand, he spread his Napoleonic Code, which was a huge deal. It got rid of old feudal laws and brought in modern ideas like equality. But at the same time, his invasions made people in places like Spain and Germany super nationalistic. They started defining themselves by not being French. And of course, after all that fighting, the map of Europe had to be completely redrawn, creating a whole new power balance. So yeah, when we talk about Napoleon, it's not just some dusty old history lesson. We're talking about a guy who was basically an architect of the modern world. Things we take for granted, like our legal systems, even the idea of what a nation is, so much of that goes back to him. His impact was just massive. You can't deny it. Which brings us right back to where we started. Was Napoleon a hero who saved the revolution and modernized Europe? Or was he a tyrant, the first of a new kind, whose ambition led to millions of deaths? Hero or villain? The truth is, he's probably a bit of both. And that's a debate that's still raging 200 years later.